Greetings. Start off with some introductions.
Good morning, Brian Surratt, the Director of the Office of Economic Development.
Thank you.
Theresa Barreras, Office of Economic Development.
Great.
David Harris, Office of Economic Development.
Andra Kranzler, Councilmember Herbold's office.
Thank you. Who would like to start?
I'll kick it off.
All right.
Would like to be more of a conversation than a rattling of all the programs that we have, and so I'm looking forward to the Q&A. I asked Theresa and David to join me at the table because I wanted to highlight two specific programs that we have: our Only in Seattle program and our Tech Hire initiative. That I think in many ways in capital, just really talks about how we've institutionalized an equity lens in our everyday work. In the memo that we sent to council, we organized our RSJI work in kind of three major equity areas. The first being around jobs and economic justice, the second area being around equitable development, and the third on service equity and delivery. When we think about economic development in Seattle, I think we're in a unique place where we see growth happening all around us. I think people have talked about the cranes in the city, and people make jokes about the cranes are the unofficial mascot of Seattle. And that's something we should be proud of, the growth in our community and how healthy our economy is. But we all also know that that prosperity is not shared across the board. And if cities are going to be leading the way, especially now in the broader kind of national conversation that we're having, concerns around who gets to participate in the American dream. Cities have to lead the way, and we're proud that our office has made it very intentional to look at equity, particularly with the racial lens, and making sure that our residents across the board have access to that prosperity. On the jobs and economic justice front, there are two areas where we spent a lot of time. One on youth employment. This has been a major initiative that the mayor has pushed when he came into office. He implored us to really think about Seattle as prosperous as we are. We have to find more opportunities for our youth in our community. And we're proud to say that this past year we had just under 3,500 youth that were a part of the Youth Opportunity Program. And I want to thank Council for your participation in that. I know that's important to you all as well. There's stretch goals that the mayor wants to continue having with youth employment. I think one of the unique things that we're trying to do here, as we've learned a lot of lessons around our infrastructure and meeting youth where they are, the youth employment program, we service from 14 to 24, that age range. And 10 years at that stage in life, there's a lot of that gap in developmental skills is enormous. And we want to start looking at youth as a continuum in their development. Parks Department has been an amazing partner in the youth employment because they can take on youth, frankly, at 14, 15, 16-year-olds who have very, minimal skills, and you would expect that, and bring them into projects and help them start getting kind of that job readiness thinking, the soft skills that are required for any job setting. And then when you look at 16, 17-year-olds who may have a few more of those softer skills, we can bring them into city departments for that summer intern. And then when they turn 18, 19, 20, that's when the opportunities working with the private sector can really come into play. And so we start looking at folks in that developmental process. And the big goal is to look at how do we connect these youth to post-secondary career opportunities and looking at career progression and career exploration. So that's the holy grail that we're trying to get to with youth and through this program.
So in your youth employment work, how does that intersect with also your work around racial equity? What measures and outcomes are you seeing as a result of that focus?
No, we've made it very intentional on particularly the SYEP, the Summer Youth Employment Program within the Human Services Department, that our focus are those youth that may be marginalized. And so the past couple of years, we've had extensive outreach. We had a youth summit, not this past year, but the year before, where we held it at Rainier Beach and targeted students of color. And they comprise the majority of the SYEP program. And so we want to continue ratcheting that number up. I think we need to get a little stronger on the metrics and understanding other departments when they hire interns, like, are they being intentional as well in hiring youth from marginalized communities?
And do you set sort of like what we saw with SPU on their WIMBY consulting and contracting and construction work, they set actual goals? Do you set goals that reflect the racial equity objectives?
We haven't set quite goals yet on the youth employment side there. I think that's a next step for us. I think one of the things we wanted to do was build out that infrastructure, having better training and wraparound services for the youth as they come in. So we're getting those nailed down, and then we will look to have some stronger measures on that. I'm going to turn it over to quickly on the Tech Hire initiative, which falls into the category of equity of jobs and economic justice, and ask David to talk about some exciting work there.
Yes, we actually started the Tech Hire initiative with looking at a racial equity toolkit. And just a background about the Tech Hire initiative, it was started by President Obama in 2015 as a way to get people who are underemployed or unemployed connected to the vast amount of open tech jobs that exist. So Seattle was designated a tech hire community. It's one of 72 now. We were designated in last March. And the city of Seattle and our office really had an explicit focus on connecting this opportunity and this initiative to underserved communities, specifically women, Black and Latino communities, as well as the formerly incarcerated. And it's really a way to bring employers, training providers, especially the accelerated training providers like the coding boot camps, and community organizations to the table around a common goal. And our regional goal is to place at least 2,000 people into tech jobs by 2020. So when we looked at our racial equity toolkit, we had an explicit outcome to increase the number and the representation of Black and Latino people in the tech industry in Seattle. And we started by looking at some data, specifically just the baseline data of how many people of color or Black and Latino people are located in various communities in King County. We saw about 6% for Black community, and let's see. And 8.7% for Hispanic or Latino community. So when working with our partners and stakeholders on this initiative, we wanted to first look at what are their baselines for their programs now. Do you meet the demographics of the communities that we're targeting? And some of them have exceeded that, and some of them have not. And we look at specifically in the tech industry, and look at large companies. There's been diversity reports. They average about 1% to 2% people of color, specifically Black and Latino, in their companies. So our first goal is to see if we can get the baseline numbers of participants in these programs to match the demographics of the community, and at the same time, looking at how we can form specific strategies to increase those numbers. Some strategies that we are going to be implementing this year are actually having some of our partners engage in racial equity training. So we're looking forward to that, not only for the training providers, but also for employers as well. And maybe looking at how, as people get placed into these roles, that they're placed into environments that are conducive for them to be retained.
And you said 2,000 tech jobs by 2020?
by 2020.
That's fantastic.
I just want to, don't want to embarrass David, but the city is extremely lucky to have David. We recruited David to come join the city. He was one of the founders of Hack the CD, and I think in many ways embodies the promise of so much untapped talent that we have in this community. Every one of those tech employers and funky employers across all industries are screaming for talent. And what we're trying to do, especially with Tech Hire, is change the imagination of these employers, saying, look, there's talent in your backyard. If you can put a little more investment in programs like Tech Hire with our training partners at the Seattle colleges, you can find talent here. And I think there's a conversation within tech industry right now. It's like, there's always been this bias around a 4-year computer science degree, and I think we're trying to slowly shift that mindset around you can get some talent without having that 4-year credential. So
I remember when the council was contemplating investing in this work a few years back, and there was a bit of skepticism about who this investment would benefit. So I'm really pleased to see the direction that you've been going in. So.
Thank you.
How we can go on for hours on this one, and I'm inclined to because it's fascinating. And as you've highlighted, it's an opportunity that's there's so much opportunity in this industry here in our city, and yet I think you led off, Brian, by talking about how the prosperity is not being shared equally. On the Tech Hire initiative, when we're working with some of the larger, or anybody really, frankly, but how do we get their ear or get them engaged? And my sense from talking to friends who work in various aspects of the tech industry is it's the companies can be very kind of culturally driven by a certain tech culture. And I get this sense that like the interview process is all about, are you going to fit into our culture? And a lot of times that culture is kind of very white male driven culture. And it almost goes against some of the work that I see we do here as a city when we want to be diverse, as we say we need to have flexibility around our culture and be open, and it seems like it's the opposite of that. And I'm curious just on what your thoughts are on that, and what are we doing, and where we're seeing successes.
Yeah, one of our goals as well for this initiative was to make sure that we had organizations that were led by people of color. And the reason for that I'm experiencing now is that even if you're able to place someone in a job, having a support network is immensely important. To be able to have a third party to come and talk to, have a community to come back to, and talk about what's going on in people that might identify with your experience. So one training provider in particular is Floodgate Academy, led by a Black founder, and they had just started their first cohort of 15 Black coders. But what's interesting is there are people from other programs as well that just come by and just talk to others for the support. And then there's also, a lot of people in the industry already that are able to give mentorship and guidance as well. So that's great. But we're also excited about this opportunity to work with larger companies to just try out something new, try out participants from a coding boot camp who might not have a 4-year computer science degree, but they're able to do the work. And some of the positions might be junior, they might be entry level, but by doing that, I think we're starting to slowly gain relationships in the community and vice versa.
And just to add on to that, I have a younger cousin who just moved to Seattle. She finished college out east, and she took a job at Amazon, and she's part of a network, Blacks at Amazon, and so there are some kind of organic things happening at the company level saying, okay, we do need to have this support bench. I will say the broader industry, I think they would agree 100% with what you're saying. I think they recognize that a problem. I think they're stuck to a certain degree on what are some of those tools, and I think that's a role that the city, through David's leadership, can play around. okay, here are some partnership opportunities, programs like Tech Hire and ADA developers who focus on women and getting them into tech. So there's outlets out there, and I think it's really about how do we scale it and make it as ubiquitous as possible. So.
And so do we have employers that we have these relationships with, that we're sending folks through this pipeline that we're creating to work? And
fortunately, Seattle is blessed that we already have a lot of different stakeholders in this work, like ADA Developers Academy, who've already been in existence for about 3 years and have relationships with Amazon, Microsoft. There's Code Fellows, Coding Dojo, the WTIA, Washington Technology Industry Association's Workforce Institute or Apprenti program. So we have about 20 different accelerated training programs, and they all already have relationships with some of the major players, as well as some medium and smaller firms as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Shifting gears and looking at the equitable development area, there's a couple of programs I want to highlight. And then before I pass on to Theresa, who manages our Only in Seattle program, one project that I'm particularly proud of our office being engaged in is Liberty Bank, 24th and Union. It's the concerns around displacement and gentrification and cultural identity. It was almost kind of ground zero, frankly, for a lot of those conversations. As we all know, the central area is the historic home for Seattle's African American community, and so much of the conversation has swirled around, okay, we know that growth is happening. Growth is, we're not going to have guardians at the gate and say no more growth. But the question becomes, how do we make the growth do right by the community as much as possible and be creative about it? Liberty Bank presented itself as an opportunity where Capital Housing was the developer, and we were able to participate with folks from obviously Capital Housing, but Africatown, Centerstone, and the Black Community Impact Alliance, and look at a long-term agreement around potential long-term community ownership. And an MOU was executed earlier, last year, that outlined the principles for that long-term community ownership. And I hope that becomes, frankly, a model for other projects that we see throughout the city where you have development opportunities. In this case, the city had investment there through housing dollars. So we had some leverage to kind of work with the partners there. The question becomes, can we look at other opportunities where the city has city housing dollars and look at that commercial space to ensure that there's commercial affordability and potential long-term community-based ownership? The question becomes, how do we translate to private development, where we may not have as much leverage around development projects working for community. So it's great to see on my Facebook feed with Liberty Bank folks soliciting, we need to find Black contractors to work on this project, and so that's a kind of grassroots and ownership that exciting to see with that project. It's a small project, but I don't want to diminish that because of its size. But I think its scope and what it signals actually is really, really powerful going forward.
Audra, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Sorry. It's okay. I'm just trying to be attentive to.
So with that, I want to pass it on to Theresa again, who heads up our Only in Seattle program. And the central area is one of those neighborhoods in which we've spent a lot of time investing in Only in Seattle. And Theresa.
Great, thank you. So one of the focus areas for our Only in Seattle program we started in 2015 was what we called racial equity in business districts. And we started it because we saw the value of working with Department of Neighborhoods, public outreach and engagement liaisons, which are now community liaisons, and how they help to do the outreach within communities and connect those small businesses with the resources that were existing in the communities. And in 2016, from what we learned in 2015, we changed the program up slightly to really focus on supporting the small businesses that were having kind of this outreach effort. And so in 2016, we did multiple touches with the community liaisons, talking to the business owners, trying to hear what concerns they had. Were they having issues with the city, with permitting, with utilities? Were they experiencing other kinds of safety issues or concerns, or were they interested in some of the technical assistance and financing resources that were available? So trying to provide more resources to the business owners. And we found that a lot of the business owners, we sort of knew this, but they weren't connecting with their local business organization, and they weren't accessing the resources that are available. And so this was our attempt to try to open some of those doors for them and start to build that relationship between those business owners and their local business organization. And in connection with this, we also provide a training to the business organizations in racial equity and implicit bias, and learning tools to how to build their relationships with the business owners. And so these two components of the program are our attempt to start to break down some of the kind of long-standing issues that we've seen. We've often supported the business organizations, but if those organizations aren't able to really reach all the businesses within their community, then there was some real gaps there. So that's been our approach, and we're continuing that approach in 2017. And one thing that we're adding in 2017 is to also do a racial equity toolkit on all business improvement area, new proposals that come into the city. So any business improvement area will receive this toolkit applied, and will analyze some issues that they may be either creating or experiencing on kind of racial equity. And we also noticed that we don't really have good information about the businesses within these communities, and particularly businesses of color, and understanding who's there now and who's at risk of maybe getting pushed out because they don't have access to some of the resources that are available. And so this year in 2017, we're going to make a concerted effort to gather some data and start tracking some of these issues.
How will the RETs be used in the BIAs? Can you just give me like a little bit of context for how that will be, what kind of questions you're going to be asked and how they'll be applied? You're not doing the RET to prioritize who gets to become a BIA, because you're doing this with areas that already have BIAs, correct?
Mm-hmm. We're applying it to new BIA proposals when they come into the city, and they're asking either to be expanded or to create a new BIA. We actually did it for Ballard last year. Ballard was a new BIA that came in through council last year, and we applied the racial equity toolkit to their application. And really, it's just a way, it's a thought process. The toolkit, it helps you uncover what some issues could be. And with Ballard, we discovered that we really don't have a lot of information about the businesses that are in that community. And so we need to do some more work to gather that information and figure out, what is the landscape of business owners of color. I think one thing we do see is that the demographic data that we do have is on residents, and that often doesn't reflect the business owners that are serving those residents within their neighborhoods. So that's a disconnect that we need to figure out, and often there are business owners of color that are going unnoticed and might need some additional resources or services, or at least should be recognized. So that's sort of the kind of questions we ask. Are the demographics of the neighborhood, the demographics of the businesses, and is this BIA going to have an adverse impact on the businesses that are there?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And also just it takes a finer look at some of the services that are being proposed for the new BIAs created. Are they in line with the needs of both the business and, frankly, the broader residential community, because they benefit from those services as well from the BIAs. I think the Ballard example, credit to Ballard, they were pretty innovative in some of the services that they would be providing through the BIA, including outreach to homeless populations as well, and human services. So I think that was also evaluated as part of our toolkit.
And it's not just city staff that are doing the RET, you guys are doing it in partnership with the business owners. So it's not just you guys going through that thought process, but they are too?
Well, the toolkit is a tool that helps city policy, but at the same time, it requires input from the community, and the outcomes that come out of the toolkit, what you need to change often impacts the community. So yes, it's a little bit of both, but yeah.
Thank you.
On the last area around service equity, I wanted to highlight a couple of programs. One, we launched what we're calling a mobile business consulting program. This was really about, frankly, our staff already does get out and contact businesses one-on-one, but we wanted to make a concerted effort and look at communities that may not have all the resources and may not be able to access the resources, whether downtown or elsewhere, and literally bring our business advisors that are internal, our other partners externally, from financing to business consulting, and go to the neighborhoods themselves. So this past year, we had mobile business consulting events in South Park, the central area, Hillman City, and Little Saigon. For all intents and purposes, it was, I think neighborhoods appreciated us being there. We helped around 40, 45 businesses with a variety of services, and the demand is there. And going forward in 2017, we hope to expand that and identify more neighborhoods in which to extend our services. On discretionary spending for WIMBYs, OED, we're not a large department, so we have limited discretionary dollars, but again, we are very intentional in how we spend those dollars and who we contract with, and we're proud to note that over 45% of our discretionary dollars go to WIMBY vendors. Again, that's something we're very intentional about. And lastly, EnviroStars is a regional collaborative that we launched last year, which the City of Seattle works with other cities, including Kirkland and other cities on the east side, where we're looking at all of our environmental services that we provide to businesses, because the marketplace can be really, really confusing, and folks concerned around greenwashing. Are we getting the right services? We touch so many businesses in so many different ways, whether it's City Light, SBU, PSC, and others. Is there a way that we can collaborate and share material and target businesses in one fell swoop, and be intentional about some of the smaller businesses and businesses with, business owners with immigrant backgrounds, limited English-speaking backgrounds? Can we be much more concerted in that effort? So really excited about that regional collaboration that's going forward on that front. We formed an advisory committee of business owners, a 25-person advisory committee. 15 of those folks are folks of color, to help kind of guide our service delivery through this regional collaboration. So that's, there's a lot more here that we can talk about in our formal report to you, but I just wanted to give you a high level, kind of a cross-section of some of the items that we're working on.
Thank you. So there's a lot of detail here. I encourage folks to take a look at it, and any questions that we didn't get to, we can follow up. You good? I want to ask, before we wrap up, how things are going out on 23rd.
23rd, we closed the financial assistance program. 21 businesses were served. We had originally identified, I think, 24 businesses that we thought were eligible for mitigation dollars there. We were very intentional in how we wanted to target the businesses and make sure the business that we really wanted to serve were being served. And those were businesses that were directly aligned with the construction area, adjacent to the construction area, micro enterprises, 5 persons or less, non-franchise, low income, and very proud that we were able to meet the needs of all the businesses that came forward requesting assistance.
And everybody's doing okay?
I think for the most part, I think one business, Mama's Coffee on 23rd and Union, unfortunately, she's no longer going to be in business. I think she was struggling up until that point, and it was a challenge for her to continue operations.
Any lessons learned from the engagement there as it relates specifically
lot of
to
lessons learned.
future transportation projects?
A lot of
and,
lessons learned.
Are you going to replicate what you've done there?
Well, I think it's what we learn most is a couple dynamics. One, sooner, deeper engagement with businesses. I think most business owners, when you talk to them, I don't think necessarily they're looking for any mitigation necessarily. They're looking just for information so they can plan. And knowledge and information is key to anything. And so we have to be much clearer and much more forthright on the front end, saying this is what the construction will look like. And frankly, if we have room in the project design, to alter design to accommodate their needs. So that just requires us to get out further in front. I think it's, again, we were very intentional about this assistance program that we focus in on low-income communities and micro businesses. And I think that's really a really important box that we want to stay in as well.
Yeah, I think that we really need your office's advocacy on behalf of these businesses as Department of Transportation projects move forward, rather than, hoping that those conversations happen and that communication happens. To the extent that you can assist in facilitating that early information, there's a lot of transportation-related construction work to be done in the next few years. Councilmember Surratt.
Thank you, Chair Herbold. Thanks to the Office of Economic Development for working on that. I do have to say, though, that, and this is not about the department, this is, just a note for the record, that the mayor's office did not immediately concede that there was an actual problem. It was only when the business owners, with the help of my office, were brought to City Hall, when their voice was brought to City Hall, that there was any question of mitigation money. And you're right that primarily businesses need information from the city, so I fully agree with you. But at the point at which the businesses, at the point that I interacted with the businesses, they were in need of mitigation money. And it was also clear that very large businesses had been mitigated, even though the mayor's office had a different narrative about it on the waterfront. And so I think that part of the overall outlook of being equitable should also be, what are we doing in terms of how city departments are engaging with very large businesses versus very small businesses. It was very clear that discrepancy was there, and I appreciate that the mayor finally conceded that needed to be done, but it was only after businesses advocated for themselves with our help. So I really agree with Councilmember Herbold that if we can, think beforehand if there are going to be any impacts and how can we mitigate them going, just on the outset rather than as a response to it, which also is important, of course, but it's always better if we prevent it, if possible. Transportation projects have to continue, of course.
I'd be interested, Brian, at some point this spring to ask you or your team to my committee with the Department of Transportation to maybe walk through what some of those lessons learned are, mostly just to talk about how future projects we're going to manage differently, hopefully in a way so that mitigation isn't required. I think that's the ultimate goal, that we get them information so that, and plan projects accordingly so that it doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
Great. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate all your work. All right.
Thank you.
See you next time.